In the early days of video games, through the 1960s and 1970s, most programmers tended to take inspiration from real-world games and concepts. They focused a lot on making digital adaptations of popular Western games, like checkers and chess. Eventually, though, there was a need to expand, to search further out for inspiration, further east. The ancient Chinese game of Go was a game of early interest, with the first known computerized version of the game appearing in 1968. A few years later, programmers would look even further eastward, to Japan. Japan is synonymous with video games nowadays, but this wasn't the case back in the 1960s and early 1970s. So, looking to the east for video game inspiration would have been quite exotic and intriguing at the time. Gomoku is a Japanese board game, tangentially related to the Chinese game Go. It uses the same black and white stone pieces as Go, and is traditionally played on a 19 by 19 gridded Go board. The first computerized version of Gomoku appeared in 1972. The original appears lost, but it was ported to the Sol-20 microcomputer in 1981, and survives on that platform to this day. That brings us neatly to today's topic, 1973's Gomoko, which you'll notice is a misspelling of Gomoku. The author of Gomoko, Peter Lynn Sessions, was an early contributor to the People's Computer Company magazine, an early independent magazine wholly dedicated to computer education. We've actually seen Sessions' previous PCC games featured on the channel, in Reverse and the Game of Chomp. Gomoko is a little different, however. Not only is it Sessions' last game he ever wrote, but it was also never published by People's Computer Company. Instead, it was published by Digital Equipment Corporation in David Ahl's seminal book, 101 Basic Computer Games, originally releasing in July 1973. Gomoko was also retained in the revised 1978 microcomputer edition of the book, entirely unchanged. Peter Sessions himself left PCC in 1973, so perhaps that's why his final game was never published by them. Sessions himself remained in the computing industry for many years after this, but also pursued his passion for music, releasing a music theory book entitled The Functions of Chords for Pop, Jazz, and Modern Styles. Now, onto the game itself. Firstly, what is Gomoku? Well, it's quite simple. The aim of this two-player board game is to win by making a line of 5 stones on the game board. Gomoku itself is sometimes called 5 in a row for that very reason. In the Japanese language, the name Gomoku, or more accurately Gomoku Narabe, is derived from the word go, meaning 5, moku, being used in this case as a counter for playing pieces, and narabe, meaning row or line up. So it means 5 line up, if you wanted to be very literal about it. Sounds a bit like Connect 4, doesn't it? Like Connect 4, the line of 5 stones can be made in any which way you like, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. Incidentally, the reason that Gomoku is 5 pieces and not 4 probably has to do with the Japanese superstition surrounding the number 4. You see, the word for 4 in Japanese is often pronounced shi. This also happens to be the same way the Japanese pronounce the word for death. The kanji are different, but that hardly makes a difference when you speak them the same way. But I digress. Gomoku these days has several different sets of rules, implemented to try and balance the game for both players. Traditionally, with a blank starting board, the player going first has the advantage, the same as in many other older logic games and board games. Peter Sessions' Gomoko computer game doesn't actually care about any of that. In fact, it doesn't even care if you win. The game explains the basic rules, then tells you that the computer doesn't know when a player has won, and that the game will continue until you tell it to stop. But that's not all the computer doesn't know. It doesn't even really know how to play Gomoku either. So we're going to swap to some live gameplay now. One neat thing that you might notice straight away is that the game is quite generous in the amount of board sizes that it gives you to choose from. You can start with a board that's as small as a 7x7 grid, or go up to a 19x19 grid, which is the standard Go board. You've seen the rules at this point, so I just want to jump straight into a game, just to show you how awful the computer really is at playing this game. Even the notes in 101 basic games warn you that the computer isn't much good at the game, but it's actually worse than that. So I'm going to do a 15x15 grid, because that's one of the standard sizes in the real world game of Gomoku, and any bigger than that in the game actually gets quite hard on the eyes. So I'm going to start by doing a move right in the center of the board, and I think you can kind of see what I mean by it being a bit of an eyesore at this size. It's just a big, wide open row of zeros, and it can be a little bit difficult to see. Anyway, the next move I'm going to make is 7-7. Diagonals are the best way to set up winning strategies in the game from my very limited experience of playing it. I'm not entirely used to the way the coordinates go. I haven't oriented myself to how it all works. I wanted to do 7-8. And here you'll see the computer doing something very strange. As you can see, it's moved all the way down here, despite me setting up a move all the way over here. This is what I'm meaning when I say that the computer is really, really bad at the game. In reality, this is just kind of an evidence of poor programming, I think. Because it doesn't make sense either way for the computer to make a move like that in any situation. So it suggests that maybe Sessions wasn't the most confident at programming when it came to this game. But no matter, we'll continue on. I'm going to go 6-8 next. And you see again the computer being incredibly random and erratic. For some reason, it just seems to not be able to comprehend basic strategy. Now it's doing something slightly more sensible. And here we go, seeing it be quite erratic again, because I've made an attempt at a winning play here. And what it should have done, if it was actually playing properly, would have been to put a stone here to block me from winning. But instead, for an unknown reason, it's decided to move down here. So I now have the opportunity to win and get 5 in a row. And so here we are, 5 in a row. I've won. And as you can also see, the game doesn't actually recognize that I have won. That's something that the player has to control themselves. And the only way to stop the game properly is to type in -1, -1 as your coordinate. And that's it. So that's Gomoko. To be honest, it's quite rubbish. To be brutally honest, it's quite a terrible game. You can't even really engage with it properly because the computer is so broken that it doesn't provide any challenge or anything like that, which is unfortunate because recently, in terms of the chronology of games, we've actually seen a fair bit of development when it comes to computer AIs and AIs that learn to play better as they play against you. In a sense, this is kind of a backward step with regards to programming and game design. So that's a shame. Personally, I wouldn't recommend you play this game. You can probably find many other different kinds of Gomoku simulators online or any other kind of versions that you can play that will actually have challenging computer opponents programmed by people who know what they're doing. So that's all for this video. This is my first attempt at doing something a little bit different for the channel in terms of the way I want to structure the videos and the kind of direction that I want to take moving forward in terms of making every game kind of like a little mini documentary, to say, and to give it a little bit more of a history, a little bit more respect for each game. Because I do believe that every game has a story, and every game deserves for that story to be told. So feedback in the comments would be appreciated on what you all think about this direction going forward. And I also want to apologize for the delay in getting the next video out. I had been working on a much larger project of this style, but because of some very difficult personal circumstances and my simple underestimating of the amount of work that it would actually require to do a much larger video of this size, it has caused a number of delays. And I do want to apologize for that. It is a learning process, but my discipline and motivation have not been at the level that I want them to be at. So that is something to work at. And I'll also admit that I have been kind of putting off doing voice recordings because speaking is not the easiest thing for me to do. So this is a difficult thing for me to do. But you don't really get very far in life without doing difficult things. And so here I am still doing it, challenging myself, pushing myself, and just wanting to be better. And I think that's something that's everybody should strive for, is to think about how they can get better, how they can be of more service to others, more service even to themselves through discipline, learning skills, overcoming weaknesses. I think those are important things for everybody to consider and to implement a bit of discipline in their lives to get to where they want to be, because you don't get anywhere without working at it. Anyway, that's my little personal rant over. I wasn't exactly planning to get into a little discussion like this at the end, but there is a lot on my mind, and it does kind of need to get spoken out, I suppose. And I kind of hope, in a sense, that if there's anybody listening that can relate to the things that I've just said, and if it helps you, then it's worth saying. So this is Obsessive Gaming Chronology, signing off for another week, and hopefully, God willing, we'll see you next time for another video. Hopefully next week, and there won't be any more delays. Take care. Goodbye.